Hello, welcome to the Tech for Good podcast. We are very passionate about two things, technology and our world. In each pod, we will be interviewing some fascinating people, business leaders, but those with a special interest in solving the biggest issues facing humanity today. Think the environment, think healthcare provision during a pandemic, think global social injustice. If you want to know more about technology's immense potential to fix and transform, then you're in the right place. In this episode, I speak to Stina Ehrensvärd. Stina, along with her husband, co-founded Yubico, the company behind YubiKeys, the hugely successful authentication devices. After striking its first deal with Google in 2011, Yubico's technology now protects more than 10 million users. In the interview, Stina discusses how YubiKeys have helped human rights organisations and other non-profits, and she gives us the inside track on her 2015 meeting with President Obama. But first, I ask Stina about her personal mission in the field of online security.
Time I logged on to the internet, I had some sort of almost spiritual experience where I realized this is a place where we're all connected, where we all can get all of this information and we are one. And then when I learned through internet security experts that this beautiful experience is basically, it's so vulnerable. It was never designed for security. It was designed for sharing. It was designed by researchers in Europe to share information with other, researchers. And today, it's only 30 years ago. We sit on it. We are here. Like everything is here. We moved our governments, our businesses, our financial systems, our healthcare systems, everything. And we have not thought about security. And this is one of, if you look at all the problems we have in the world right now, COVID, climate, crisis, environment, but that was, somewhere on that top 10 list is internet security. And when I realized that this was a real problem, I just felt a calling, literally a calling, like, okay. And the reason I thought I was the right person to help build a more secure internet was not because of my skill set, it actually was the team I had around me. And at the time, I had married an internet security expert who said it would only take him one day to empty my bank account. and then I realized, oh God, I have some kind of expertise here that I can build on. And I have a background in product design. And I started asking my husband, like, okay, what can you not hack? And, from that question, the product that we develop, but actually also become a global standard. The global standard is the bigger mission. And this is 15 years ago. So we're a late bloomer. It took some time to get there. But
Okay, no, fascinating stuff. And that's a nice kind of segue into my next question. For the benefit of the listeners, Stina, tell us about Yubico. What does Yubico do and how has it become successful?
So the first question that I asked my husband, why could he hack my bank account? He said, because it's all software. The bank had given me a software certificate that I downloaded on my phone or my computer and a username and password. And we all know that username and passwords are no longer secure. And a software that you download on your phone is apparently not secure either. And then I said, what is more secure? And Jacob, my husband, said it's either a smart card or some versions of bank authentication tokens. But they were never designed for the web. They were never designed for mobile. And you have one key to one service. Or you have to go through some kind of single sign-on service in order for this to work on many places. And then my husband said, that's not going to work. And I just got fascinated with this question. And we dig it into, and eventually we developed something we call the YubiKey. It's a little USB key. You can tap it against your phone or you can plug it in your computer, and it has both USB-A and USB-C contact. And with this product, we started a company called Yubico, and eventually we got Google as a customer, and that's when we wrote the business plan to move to California from Stockholm, and not only convince Google, but all the leading platforms and browsers on not only making support for this product, but enable a new protocol that would enable a authenticator like our YubiKey to work across any number of services. So I can log into my bank, to my Facebook, to my Google email, or my corporate applications, or my government service. I can pay my taxes, or all of that with the same key, and it would never be able to be hacked. And we came up. Actually, the first YubiKey had a set of security features, but together with these major platforms and browsers that we worked with here in Silicon Valley, we came up with a new set of security features. And since it has been deployed here with the largest tech companies on the planet, we have seen zero account takeovers. And it worked. It was really, really fast. And I think actually the security is one aspect, but it's easy is the most important aspect, because we're never going to be successful if it's too complicated. People are not going to do something. So the way we actually develop this protocol is once you set it up with your computer or your phone, you don't have to use it anymore. But that's not the scalable part. The scalable part is now when this standard is integrating into all leading platforms and browsers in other devices, directly into computers, directly into phones.
It's an amazing story, Stina, and it's the simplicity that really strikes me, like the simplicity of this technology and how successful it's been. Obviously, the world of cybersecurity is very kind of complex, you tend to think, and why do you think this what appears to be a kind of very simple solution has been so successful? Can you put your finger on that?
Our strategy was very risky. When I moved to California, I had some early team members and an angel investor who basically said, "What you're trying to do?" Because the plan was, okay, who are all the users are in the world? I mean, all of us. I mean, face it, we are all using 5 companies or 7 or 10 companies on the planet. We're using Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, a few more. And if we can, my strategy was if we can work with these companies, understand their security needs, and get our product and the standard supported in all these browsers, then it will work out of the box with these services and these companies and their products, their phones, their computers. And that was basically the secret. Because when it just works, when you just, you don't have to download a phone, you don't have to bring it up every time. You go into these pages and it says, hey, sign up your key. I think that is the secret, working with the most influential internet thought leaders that, unfortunately, this is how scary it is today, but they define our internet today.
Hello, I'm Daniel Brigham, editor of Tech for Good magazine. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and if you want more, you can head over to techforgood.net for some compelling and thought-provoking stories, from high-tech insect farms that could solve world hunger to a global mission to counter the spread of COVID-19 disinformation. We've got Tech for Good covered. You can read and subscribe at techforgood.net.
I know in 2015, you had the opportunity to talk about your technology and the potential of your technology with the then sitting US President, Barack Obama. What did you talk about?
It was actually a really strange moment in my life, because I can share with you, I don't live very far from Stanford University, and this was the venue that hosted a conference with the at the time, the White House had actually come down from Washington, D.C. to Stanford, and they were hosting a big internet security event where they invited some of the innovators here in Bay Area and Silicon Valley to discuss the threat of internet security and projects that we were some of us were working on, and I was very fortunate to be invited. And Stanford is just a few kilometers from where I live, honestly. So I took my bike and I was just parking my bike outside the big venue at Stanford when I got a message on my phone. The president wants to meet you. And I almost dropped my bike. It's just one of those funny moments where, well, anyway, then, some security guard came and, looked in my bag and like, okay, before you can meet him, you have to go through some kind of very advanced process. And I said, why didn't you tell me in advance? And he said, they will never tell you in advance because, I shouldn't. That could be a security threat by itself. Anyway, I got a few minutes and I walked in and I had no idea what it was all about. So I just, took my pitch, and I said, my company is working on new open authentication standards that are aiming to protect all internet citizens, including 300 million Americans, to be safe online. And he smiled and said, I know, that's why you're here. So, and then I said, so how can you help? And he said that his team would follow up with me. And then I said, I think you are a really cool president. President Obama was a very cool president. That's just my personal, I can't say that every president on the planet has been cool, but he has some cool factor around him. Yeah, it was actually a fun story because then this is how the world, sometimes things are super serious. This whole internet security world is very scary and fairly dry. And I then, a week later, got an email from the security advisor from the White House that invited me up to meet with them at the White House, not with President Obama again, but with these internet security advisors to him. And I got up there and I made a mistake, which is by myself sort of funny, because I realized that I had not gone through that ID verification process that you need to do in order to get into the White House. So a few hours before the meeting, they said that I couldn't come in. And I was like, oh, I missed this fantastic opportunity. And then they said, well, we can come out to you. And I said, where? Well, there is a Starbucks 2 blocks from the White House. Can we meet there? And it was just these one sort of surrealistic moments where I was sitting in this little Starbucks with 2 very, serious guys with gray suits, and we were talking about the future of online identity. And it was a very crowded Starbucks with all people coming and going. And we had this little corner trying to squeeze in. But eventually, it started. A really good dialogue started with NIST, which was it's an open standards body here in the U.S. that drives open standards, and we eventually, were encouraged to get a grant to. How could you develop a new online internet identity citizen sort of project where Americans could use this technology to log into government services? So that basically it was a feel-good story. You asked, what did we talk about? Well, we didn't talk very long, but the story, is long.
No, and the kind of subsequent activities of your organization, I know you've done a lot of work in the political area and that side of it, so it's obviously had a big impact for you guys. And that brings us nicely onto Yubico's recent efforts with Microsoft and the Account Guard program. Do you mind talking a bit about that program?
Yes, it started actually with last year. An organization was set up that was called Defending Digital Campaigns here in US, and Microsoft Account Guard was one of the partners. So it was several tech partners and internet security companies who were working together with this organization that was set up. And it was set up after Hillary Clinton her email was phished, which may have changed the political area here in US. And then members of the tech community here in US, including Microsoft and Microsoft Account Guard, set up like, hey, this shouldn't happen again. So all the services that election campaigns, the most common services that they use, their email systems, should be, the tech company wanted to protect, wanted to offer protection. And then we were invited to be one of the partners. And YubiKeys was used together with Account Guard and together with other online systems like Google G Suite and Amazon systems to protect the US election campaign in 2020. And we continue now together with Account Guard we just extended our partnership with Account Guard and we donate keys to election campaigns. We donated keys to this election campaign. We continue to donate keys to now election campaigns in 30 countries. And the last few years, we did not only donate keys to election campaigns, we also donated keys to human rights organization, freedom of the press that help to educate and protect journalists who are at risk. We have donated keys to or other sort of organizations that work for a free open internet. And the most powerful sort of feedback that we've got, except sort of being able to help protect the election campaign, was actually a journalist from a non-democratic country who sent an emails to us. And he had set up a key with his email systems, and some of his coworkers had not. And he wrote an email with a headline saying, "Thank you for saving my life." And that was a moment where I realized, like, this is not just building a company and a standard. This is about protecting, the world at large, because this guy's coworkers are no longer alive.
How big a part now is that kind of thing to your mission as a company? Because obviously you're a business, as you say, but do you feel like you have a greater kind of purpose to try and tackle some of those issues there that you talked about?
I mean, this whole company started with how can we help protect, this beautiful human experience, and then as the company evolved, and fortunately, we got more financial resources and more customers, we had the luxury, because not all companies have that, to donate. Because we were making profits and we were growing. And so we said part of today now, and this year we're giving away 30,000 keys, more than 30,000 keys, maybe 30, I think, like, I don't know, we're giving away several thousand every month, which is then we take from our profits and give to election campaigns, to journalists, to organization that works for the larger security. I mean, we work on internet security, but if we have no free speech, if we don't have democracy, if we don't have a free open internet, I honestly don't believe that the whole work we are doing with internet security will have a lot of impact. So I feel right now that if our mission is to provide internet security, we also have to, do what we can to protect these very valuable and very vulnerable, I would say, because you can't take either democracy or free speech or human rights for granted anymore. A few years ago, I was more confident that the world was going in the right direction. I actually am concerned where some of these conversations are going today. So whatever we can do to help.
Do you want to keep up to date with the latest in enterprise, technology, and digital transformation? Visit digitalbulletin.com for news, long reads, thought leadership, and so much more. That's digitalbulletin.com.
Does your work with the big tech companies also give you maybe some encouragement in that area? I know you mentioned Google before, you work with Facebook. Talk a bit about your work with those companies and exactly what that entails.
I think they all have programs. I mean, Google has an advanced protection program. Microsoft have Microsoft Account Guard. I mean, I believe that most of the tech companies today are realizing the power, the responsibility they have in the world. They're more powerful. The combined value of 5 tech companies on the planet. This is what I heard. I haven't got it verified, but something like 5 or 10, maybe it's up to 10 companies, is more worth than all of European, all of European assets. I mean, it's like, these are just crazy amount of value in terms of, and money and power. So I honestly believe that the tech company must take responsibility. They are taking responsibility, but they also have a challenge, especially the companies who live on collecting data, because that is being misused for non-democratic forces and for powerful financial forces and for, manipulating people with false data. So I think the tech companies actually are in a very interesting time where they have all this power, but they actually are sitting with a responsibility I don't think they were prepared for. And the world is definitely not prepared for it. So we'll see.
You mentioned the kind of global standard that really seems to be your kind of personal drive at the moment to try and get that message through and develop a kind of open global standard around internet security. Maybe talk a bit more about that, where we're kind of at with that at the moment and your hope for the future.
So it started with Yubico presenting the basic concept of the YubiKey and this idea of one key to any number of services for Google in 2011. And in 2012, we signed a partnership to develop that into the first sort of set of users with 100,000 users inside Google who, no, actually it wasn't, Google didn't have 100,000 people at the time, but we made 100,000 keys for Google. And then eventually with that, when that was such a successful pilot with all Google employees, we contributed the standard to an organization called FIDO Alliance. And FIDO Alliance was at the time, a handful, maybe a dozen companies with, tech, financial, device companies. And today it's hundreds of companies around the world with the biggest platforms and browsers and financial services are actually backing it. Once I was in FIDO Alliance, it's been a long and interesting journey to get a lot of companies on board and being patient, being, because there are other companies that make other agendas and, getting everyone aligned hasn't been easy. I think the big moment was last year when we got Apple on board, because that was the final. They came in later. And then this year with Microsoft made support for this new standard in their new cloud platforms. So it's really the momentum is starting to take up. And the word I have to the world would be, this is an open standard. If you are a software company, if you're a company, that hosts some kind of service, either you make support for the free open source service that we provide, or you look at companies who provide this technology, because it will help to protect your online identity. If you're using Google, or if you're using Microsoft or Amazon, or I would encourage you to go into the security setting where they say, choose two-factor authentication, and there is an option there called security key. So this is the complicated sort of the landscape that we started. YubiKey with Google, became FIDO, then became an organization inside W3C that's called, the name is WebAuthn, and then for consumer it's called Security Key. And this is very unfortunate, and it's because there is several different organizations now working on the standards, and they all have named it differently. So from a marketing perspective, people say, well, what is it really? I think, people like, normal people will understand it as FIDO security keys or FIDO in general. And I would encourage everyone that if they don't actually have a bank or a company system that have support for it, that they go to their bank and request it. And we saw that actually happening here in the US. It was a friend of mine who is a successful tech entrepreneur, and he called up his bank and said, why is my Facebook and my Google more secure than the place I have my money? I'm going to move all my money if you don't make support for the standard of these YubiKeys. And eventually, 10 years later, they now are rolling it out to their first set high net worth individuals. That's the first step, but that's how you can actually influence.
Stina, we're nearly there, but I want to bring it back to the point you made right at the very beginning of this interview. You said internet security and the kind of issues and risks around it is one of the kind of top 10 issues that we should be confronting as a society. Ultimately, given what you've said there and the path we're on with standards and the role of big tech companies and how influential they could potentially be here, do you believe in an open and secure internet in the future? Do you think that is possible?
Absolutely. But it's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be completely secure. And I often make a metaphor with the seatbelt. In the 50s, we had 10 times less cars on the street. And today, the total, with 10 times more cars on the street, the total number of accidents is actually lower. It's because we started, during these years, security became something that was built into cars. We got seatbelts, we got crash zones, we got airbags. And, you can't buy a car today if it isn't good security. And I believe that's where the internet will eventually go. You will buy devices that are more secure. You will get into services that are more secure. This is a patchwork today because it's sort of this very similar to where the cars were in the 50s. Cars in the 50s were not designed for security. They didn't have seatbelts. They didn't have crash zone. They didn't have, so I think, I'm not saying it will be an ultimate security, ultimate, it won't be an internet where nothing can happen, but people will be educated what to do. And there are two things. Actually, when people ask me, what can we do? 90% of all hacks out there are dependent on two very simple things that you and I can do. We can patch our software. We should actually not use old software and services because that aren't updated with we should always update our software, both on our phones and computers, because hackers always find those vulnerabilities. So you want to be one step ahead. And these large modern cloud platforms, they actually have their ducks together. They continuously update. Then two-factor authentication is what can stop 80% of the hacks. 80% of all the threats or all the news that you read about with breaches are due to someone who stole your login credentials, because everything is now moving to the cloud, and the cloud is open for everyone. So if you don't stop that door, or sort of don't have a good lock on that, access to your online accounts, then unfortunately, I don't think we will see a secure internet. But those two things are a very good start for a next more secure internet. And it's not going to be perfect security, but it's going to be far better.
That was the Tech for Good podcast. Listen, subscribe, and rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher.